Well, the whole social media environment is they want to point out to you the 1 in 1 million chance event happening to get you to run in there. And now the whole landscape is littered with that. When in reality is you got to look for the 1 in 10 and 1 in 100 shots, right? We live in a two sigma world, but we're being told six sigmas around the corner every single day. And so what you have to do, you have to train your mind. You have to train your mind as to what is likely versus what is possible.
I think, therefore. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Bob Kudla, tradelikeagenius.com. Remember, this mad world that we're moving into, I'm looking at it as the tariffs being the be-all, end-all cause of everything that can be explained away in case there needs to be an explanation. But then again, is Trump mad, as in the Mad Hatter, or is he a mad genius? So speaking of genius, trade genius right here, Bob Kudla, we come together every month, try to look around the corner for, things larger in scale that are inbound here. So Bob, I'm just going to leave it like that. We're going to start it off. And I would just say, where is the madness going to take us? Because this last month was more change than probably several years, if not more. And now where do we come right now? So walk me through some madness. I shouldn't say forecasting, but glimpsing in the crystal ball.
So, I mean, look, we're making a clean break. You heard of the fourth turning. I mean, this is, in this environment, you're dealing with a drug addict. The United States has been addicted to cheap foreign goods. And, on the surface, it looked okay, but the patient was dying inside. And so you have a group of people, primarily on the coasts, well-educated, white collar, information society, government, parasitic society, that were getting cheap goods from Europe and from Asia. But the rest of the country was being hollowed out. And at the same time, we were slowly, when a bug struggles in a spider web, what happens? The bug just gets more and more entangled. And that's what was happening us with our economy. We're at a point now where even today, if China decides to, they can cut off all the pharmaceutical antibiotic precursors, and we're vulnerable to multiple millions of deaths, right? I think insulin is one of the big ones. Antibiotics is a big one. They hollowed out many of our industries, but people don't think in these terms. And so Trump he's thinking past this, and now he's making a clean break. Part of what you're seeing is that temper tantrum is playing out in the stock market. And so you have people saying, hey, look, if we can make things look and appear so bad to people, we can get Trump to back off. Okay, so they paint these dire forecasts, of economic doom. They're saying the stock market will crash, it'll never recover. He's destroying us. We've never had such a poor start, blah, 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 blah. But the interesting thing about it is, and anybody who listens to me, I'd say the same thing. So I probably will not know a single person who will lose their job in the government or a byproduct of the government from Trump's policies. But we will know people who are going to get better jobs around the country because of the manufacturing base moving back into the country. It's just that we're doing a forced resettlement from the coast back into the hinterlands, if you will, and to then reestablish these manufacturing bases. We're already seeing it. The South is going to be the first to benefit from this because they have worker policies and regulation policies that are friendlier to new businesses. But at some point, it's going to be everywhere. And I'll give you one example, even here locally. So one of my neighbors owns a injection molding company. And so they as soon as these tariffs were being sniffed around, people started shifting production to his firm. And because they can't take a chance of them not getting their product from a third country or a tariff country. And so you're starting to see some of that. The downside from this is, and it's a necessary downside, there's no free lunch, is that you're going to see a one-time uptick in the cost of goods. Now, not necessarily inflation, cost of goods, because you're going to have relief in the steel industry, in the auto industry, these other industries that were being pressured so hard from these mercantilistic countries that they're going to get a little bit more pricing power. But at the same time, you're going to see wages increase too. So the net effect on the economy is going to be a good guy. Now, you notice I didn't say inflation. And I think what people need to understand is that, only 22% of our GDP is really generated around trade. Okay. Most of the economic activity is in services or domestic production or government. And so the effect on, what they say, probably the tariff rate is going to be between 10 and 18% net. And so you're looking at, what's 1/5 of that, right? So you're looking at maybe a 2 to 3% cost bump. But the money supply is what drives inflation, not just cost, because if something costs too much, you just buy less of it. Okay. That's not inflationary. That's just higher cost. And so you're going to get an environment here where Trump now with Doge and with the tariffs, income, and we'll talk about repricing gold and what that does too. Is that you're gonna see actually tariffs are deflationary. Okay, and we have 50 years of data in the 1800s that showed just that. So and then now with advanced manufacturing, these new factories coming over. If a loss, it was 2,000 employees in Indonesia, it's not coming back to America with 2,000 jobs. It'll come back to America with 200 jobs because the new plant's going to be loaded with advanced equipment and advanced AI tools and software tools, productivity tools, and so you're basically going to be transferring back, just like what happened with wireless in African countries. They didn't string lines everywhere, right? They just went direct to wireless, or now you're going direct to satellite, in terms of your internet. So these things are a transition. I think Trump has till probably now of next year to get some of these victories in place, but I think he's already going to have that. And then I'll take a breath here in a second, but he has something in his pocket that could drop $1.5 trillion into the treasury that he can also use to either create a sovereign wealth fund or pay down more debt, or to show the American people that he already balanced the budget his first year in office. So there's a really interesting thing, and it's all about the repricing of gold, which has been done twice in the past before. So I say he looks mad, and in a year from now, everybody's going to be simply glad. And I think it's going to be something that has to happen. If not, we will lose the sovereignty of this country.
Yeah, so many people have warned against this bloated, backwards, upside down, services only, government only society where we've lost our manufacturing and sent it overseas. Like, that has been warned about as a massive trigger for societal unrest, disruption, and dare say hyper stagflation for a moment. Because these factories, when they come back, it's going to be all around 3D printing as well. Like, these technologies, you just described it, that leapfrogging, but we still have all this, what you consider current tech on the stock market. But how do you revamp that and bring that into a total AI dominated sector again? It's almost like we are replacing the technologies of itself, of the sectors, because everything's going to be AI. They've already broadcast that clearly. It's all going that direction. So something must be destroyed for the other to come in new. So you see how that tech, since what, 99.com, whatever bubble, like that iteration of the replacement of all the previous way the world worked with dot matrix printers and all these different things and computers and everything you could think of, wireless, everything. It was wiped out and replaced with what we are living in right now. We are coming back into a wipeout and replacement of all AI technologies moving forward. This old antiquated tech that we lived to for the last 30 years, that needs to go away. So when everybody comes back with these factories, you're right, it's not going to, I would doubt it would be 200. It would be far less, especially with AI. They got dark factories running where there's nobody there, just the robots and automated systems operating by themselves, but then add in 3D printing technologies on demand. No, 50,000 unit run orders, then you hope that it all sell and you can sell the other off on wholesale market. They're going to go down to almost a zero waste policy where every single order coming in will be an on demand. So think about Amazon print on demand book, but now take it into the entire goods sector. This is the kind of the direction it's going. Every single electronics sector, everything's going to be print on demand. Now, where does that take us? Because, well, the ethylene, we just caught out, they can't get their base plastics product over in China right now. So if you're talking about taking away this, taking about that, that's a natural gas byproduct. And, unless China reduces tariffs on that single product alone, their plastics industry collapses in China. But then we need that packaging material for back here in the US. So you're getting these double loops. And again, what is it? It's about the restructuring of our world with an excuse behind it so nobody blinks or asks deeper questions. And you're hitting on all those same points, man. All cylinders are firing on that. So where does it come with gold? Because that's the next thing. They're going to have to revalue, repeg, reassess, and get us on to some new standard in addition to the economy, in addition to trade. Shipping is going to be collapsing next, because if we don't have those vessels cruising across the ocean, then there's definitely going to be some blowback. And we've seen that even in COVID, like the shipping companies struggled. The index for all the shipping, everything just went. Like, how do you revalue that? Well, you're going to have to think up a new market structure for valuation. If things aren't running and we come into a regionalized world, the entire world needs to be revalued because it's not going to operate under the old rules. So this is a complete reset of everything. So, what do you think? Where are we going with gold and silver then and pricing there? Okay, we wipe out some debt and then jumping $100 a day these days. It's insane.
Where is it at right now? It's 34.37. So we'll probably get a bit of a pullback, but we're probably double Dutch plus, just maybe up to $5,000. You got to understand, at $3,500 gold, Trump can reprice what's in the in Fort Knox. Remember Roosevelt did this in an executive order where repricing gold, and then that's an accounting treatment on the Treasury General account, because that's the asset of the United States. And then they were able to drop it into the TGA, and then Trump could take that 1.5 trillion and do whatever he wants with it. That's today. He could do that. I did some fast math here. At about 100K, you wipe out the entirety of the national debt of the United States for gold. Now, is that impossible? Absolutely not. Look what happened with Bitcoin, right? There's no reason why gold can't continue to move higher. Now, I'm not making a market call, so people settle down. I'm just giving you as an
Hold your
example.
horses.
But he doesn't have to have it happen all at one time. Every year, let's just say Trump makes it through 4 years and Vance makes it through 8 years. That's 12 years. If every year they're able to balance the budget by a repricing of gold and taking off the Treasury. You remember when they start taking that debt off, the deficit falls too, because a lot of the deficit now is interest expense, he could, once Powell gets out of there, he could bring in a lackey and he could just reprice the debt down to a 0% borrowing that the banks have to buy, by the way. And then, he's taking all that debt right out of the book, and then he could be bringing debt off by gold. So it's a really interesting strategy. And yeah, view from the manufacturing is, I was giving you as an example, and it's not just 3D printing. I mean, you got vapor deposition, and the other thing, the hugest thing, we're talking about it in our room this morning, is that you don't have the long lead times. I was talking to a kid getting into basically the textile / fashion industry here in LA. That was a dead industry 5 years ago. They're bringing textile manufacturing back into Los Angeles, one of the most expensive places to do business in the world. Why? because the technology, the cutting technology, the design technology, the lower lead times that are involved there. Instead of going to China or Vietnam or Malaysia, whatever, and doing a job run, if you want to be ready for Christmas, you already had to put your order in. Okay. Now, if you're sitting in LA and you have this technology and you don't know what Christmas is going to look like, right? If you miss the fashion, like you said, you're stuck with crap. So now these guys have 2 to 3 week lead times on product. And if something goes hot, because you lived over in Asia, you try to call Chinese manufacturer. Look, these people are extremely accommodating, right? They want money too. They'll say, well, I can't get it to you for 4 months. So you run out. Here in the US, you got something running hot. Hey, we'll have something back out to you in 2 to 3 weeks. And then companies, get to, they don't have to carry inventory because they can have their suppliers sitting right next to them. They're in their meetings, right? Almost like what Walmart does with their vendors. I mean, you're integrated with them and you just walk right over to them and say, hey, we're ramping up, sales are moving up, you can ramp up. So I think I'm excited about it. I was telling somebody yesterday that's in actually the digital textbook industry. I said, your business is going to change radically. I said, AI can write your book for about 1/100th of what you're going to sell your book for. And what I'm saying to people is that you want to be a creator. If you're anywhere in the value chain other than creating, you risk being annihilated. And so it's scary and it's going to be exciting at the same time.
Yeah, so that's the truth there, because as this world's moving, the communications and interconnectivity of us all communicating in real time, like those changes are going to have that need met by somebody somewhere in real time or near real time. I know there's a gap between by the time that light comes to your eye and your finger moves, but after that point, somebody is going to jump to solve that problem. And if you are able to create a solution, like again, on demand, I really believe a lot of the solutions are going to be on demand solutions for people just seeking out problems that they can solve. Yep. Versus having a corporate behemoth try to solve a problem within itself for an industry. I believe this is going to be the time of individual creators, not just for social media, that sort of thing, but in terms of productivity increases, enhancements, or maybe even we wind the clock back to real rudimentary things with biogas or whatnot. But moving forward on the coding side, if you can come up and implement that solution, I think it's going to be more the time of the individual, where we reach this time of individuality meets corporate, and the individuals are going to be part of that arm. And think about efficiencies that could be gained if corporations were allowed that to go to independent creators versus having all that in-house staff. Like just think about how fast things could move and pivot on a dime, and what the cost savings would be.
Yeah, we're seeing it now in my industry. Is that look, I'm not a programmer, but I would say I'm a systems design kind of person, and so I have all the ideas, and I then have to go to programmers or get in their lead time, or my partner's overloaded. He can't help me run the business and code. But now with the AI tools out there, I mean, we're knocking stuff out in 20 minutes that would take us 4 or 5 weeks to do, and so you're getting what I would call the mass decentralization is upon us. And so right here, there's a 2-man crew. We can run a nice business. I don't need third parties. I don't need India now to do programming. Okay. So that is huge. I mean, absolutely huge. You're in the, ag business, they used to dump 1 million pounds of chemicals to weed. Now you have satellite and you have AI and you have automated, you may be putting 1,000 pounds on instead, and all that is just, we're just ripping cost structure out of everything. And it's deflationary. Now, if it happens on a nice glide path, it's great, but these things tend to do this. At Trade Genius, obviously, I tell people I don't worry about anything, but I worry about everything, but because I can't control any of it, how do I profit from it? And so we just look at what's going to move. And then, but we just let our tools then tell us who the winner is. Like, look at Palantir. Remember, software trumps hardware all the time, right? Network effects trump software all the time. So, so you look for, okay, software, and I was in the solar business, and once the engineers got in there and started writing code in the inverters, they ripped the cost structure out of installing solar, because you didn't need an electrician now to do the work. I mean, multiply that by every industry. Do we need lawyers in the future? How about car chasing attorneys with the advent of automation now of accident reduction? These guys are already pivoting off of ads for cars, accidents, to other kind of accidents, because by 2030, it's estimated 40% of all accidents will disappear. And you're looking at basically a plunge in the cost of auto insurance. So, see, I tell people I have a macro view, you have a macro view, but if my macro view doesn't reflect reality, I don't care if I'm wrong, as long as I'm making money, because my algorithm doesn't care about what I think. It just tells me the momentum indicators are providing me with a buy order, and that's what we take.
If anybody's interested, trade with 2030.com. Check out the packages Bob's offering. Also, joining the rooms and then having the algorithm to be able to give you those automated signals. And you can either go for the larger, just complete market reversals in either direction, or you can try to jump in on different time frames that you think you might want to go into, 1 hour, 4 hour, 15-minute, whatever. But it's all there in those algorithms cover. That's the greatest thing. It's not time dependent. You can run whatever you like on that, days, weeks on the trades, or you can come swinging back into the very short duration. But that's the thing, the algorithm plugs in and goes through all times, which is, again, that's a game changer as well.
Yeah, and look, and you can set the algorithm to look for dip buys. You can set the algorithm to look for what I would call, deep retracements. It doesn't really matter. And then you just heard it beeps when they show up. And then you don't have to even be paying attention. I say half our customers have a job, and they get the alerts on their phone, and they get to sell, and they go on their phone and make the trade and get back to work. So it's a really fascinating environment. So, but I'm stoked. Change meets opportunity, and I think we're there. And for those people worried about, look, Trump's playing a big game of chicken with these countries, and as Scott Bessent said, you can't lose a trade war if you're the one that's importing everything. So he has everybody basically by the short hairs right now, and he's gonna wrestle out opportunity. And who knows, he may get his $1 trillion of tariff money, into the treasury, which would be, pretty amazing.
Yeah, we'll see where it goes. This is going to be such an interesting year for so many people in terms of the actual shifting of the reset is taking place during these months here. So again, Chinese are very famous for their saying, the opportunity and the danger. Wait, gee, each of those characters is part of another word that combine in, and that's always been it. Like for thousands of years, wherever there's dangerous times, there's always going to be an opportunity in that, instead of just going for the straight, oh, the world's going to collapse. Well, it never really, it has sort of, it's reestablished itself, but we wouldn't be sitting here sipping cups of coffee or whatever you were just drinking without having a stable enough world that can be delivered to a place we can buy it. So, if that's still functioning and all this chaos they're putting in your head is in your head, because we're still getting beverages of our choice at our tables, then, it's simply a mind game at that point.
But, you bring up a good point, because, I came from the financial software industry world, and we run on error rates of orders of magnitude of 6 and 7 sigma, which is 100,000 or 1 error per million. And what happens now with social media, look, and you and I deal with it too, because clickbait and how do you get people to look at your stuff? Well, the whole social media environment is they want to point out to you the 1 in 1 million chance event happening to get you to run in there. And now the whole landscape is littered with that, when in reality is you got to look for the 1 in 10 and 1 in 100 shots, right? That's where it can trip you up personally, or you can make a lot of money personally. So So, we live in a two sigma world, but we're being told six sigmas around the corner every single day. And so what you have to do, you have to train your mind. You have to train your mind as to what is likely versus what is possible. And once you can do that, then you can see the opportunity. A lot of people are frozen. Went to the bank the other day. Lady goes, I didn't even look at my portfolio. And I said, why? I said, do you know that in the past, over many decades, there was always a 10% correction every year in the stock market. It's just in the last 15 years, they kind of blew up that model. And they said, every 2 years is a 20% decline in the stock market. And every decade there was a 40% decline in the stock market. That's just normal stock market behavior. And I said, so you have to reach beyond that and to say that something else changed that's going to force it down. And look, and we've gone how many? We got 15 years without a recession. I don't count the COVID recession as a recession. That was a manufactured crisis. But since 2008, we really haven't had an economic recession. And so those things come every 4 to 5 years, normally, normal events. So we're just getting back to a normal business rhythm. I'm fully expecting a recession by the end of the year, but I expect us to be exploding out of it come 2026, just because of all the jobs that are going to be shifting to the United States. I wouldn't want to be in Europe, and I wouldn't want to be in Asia right now, but the United States is going to be sitting, in pretty good shape here, and we're going to be able to control our destiny to an extent that we haven't in a long time.
Speaking of those market tops and possible tops, so we spoke last month, and you were calling that one of two things would happen, and one of them did here. So we dropped out on that after the, right around it was at the end of the month when earnings were coming in. You're like, either going to skyrocket or we're going to just drop off a cliff. And it didn't take any middle path, that's for sure. So all those other variables, there was only two choices, pretty much up Loch Ness Monster or down off a cliff. So now that we've run through this course here, what are we looking for? May, June, July, are we reaching a top, and then summer's going to stagnate because you had some forward thinking out that way? November high, October, somewhere in the fall was the peak, and then it drops off into your recession / incredible reduction at that point. So do you got those two significant points of time? You talk about that.
We didn't make a lower low, and we didn't make a higher high yet. So our view is that I think the top is in. That top was earlier this year is the market top. We were wondering, like in 2001, are we going to make the high in April and May? The market told us they're not going to do that. People are bailing out pretty hard, although today is like an incredible, crazy day in the market. But I think it's a slow collapse of asset prices. So we think now, with all this Trump news out there, we're getting what's called basically Trump. We're getting worried, tariff wary environment now, where you just can't keep up in the ante so much. The market's going to start ignoring it. So we should have a little bit of push up into May, but it's not going to be anywhere near what we thought it was going to be earlier in the year, prior to all this Trump tariff activity. And we think we're going to make a low into the fall. So what I keep telling people is, days like today, you just get slightly more defensive every time they give you this opportunity. Hard to short the market. We shorted it yesterday. We had to get out the same day, because when you're in a bear market is when the market goes down one day, up one day, down one day, up one day. What they're doing is they're creating liquidity for themselves, and they're using your portfolio to do it. So you just need to take the up days, trim a little bit. You take a down day, then you look if there's an opportunity to do a reversal for a day or two. But if you're a long-term investor, you should have been leaking out for like the tech stocks, and you should have been rolling into commodities. We talked about that ad infinitum, you and I, and that's playing out. And so energy is holding up pretty well. I think they're going to have a hard time keeping it under $60 because there's just not enough supply out there. Even with the recession coming, the supply imbalance will outrun that. So, energy names that pay good dividends are going to do well. Drill baby drill is a thing. If he does this deal with Korea and Japan, which we think they're going to do, Alaska is going to be, they're going to build a pipeline So a lot of opportunity for us there, and that's all construction jobs. LNG facility, now we took back over the Panama Canal. Louisiana is building LNG facilities out to Kazoo. All that stuff's going to be going to Europe and into Asia, and basically the entire German chemical industry is moving to the United States. The plastic industry is going to be moving back to the United States. So we think then going to 2026, you're going to see that overtake, the recession. But we're dealing with a lot of people that have been in financialization jobs. They're all going away. If you're in real estate and you're in finance and you're in insurance, you're screwed. You better start getting comfortable around working in factories again. And it's not your father's factory either. These factories are way different. My daughter's roommate works on robots in Upland, California, $38 an hour at 25 years old. All the overtime that person wants. Okay. So you have a 25-year-old making over 100 grand a year. So there's plenty of opportunity out there for people. They just need to take your head out of the sand, but we will have an adjustment first. Look, Bitcoin and gold are going to continue growing higher. Remember, it's not just about the United States for gold and Bitcoin, okay? It's the liquidity and it's the debt around the world. That's the protection. And as you know, we just had this conversation this morning in our room, is that would you rather own Bitcoin or Misty? And our answer unequivocally is Misty, because Misty is a derivative of MicroStrategy, which is a derivative of Bitcoin, but it's leveraged with dividends and speculation. So as long as Bitcoin goes up, Misty is going to go up even higher. MSTY guys, get it in your portfolio. Here's a free piece of advice for you. And this pays out. It pays out an annualized dividend in the 80 to 100% range. Okay, and it's a synthetic dividend because it's based on sold calls and sold puts and stuff like that. These are synthetic derivative positions. It's not new. It's just new for retail. Plenty of opportunity. Same with gold. The miners too. Always goes over really well. A lot of people join us after they see this thing. They say, "Can it be that easy?" Yeah. It can be that. There's rules in the stock market. Okay. I'm not promising you riches beyond your imagination. I'm just going to show you ways which you could trade to be much more effective than most people probably are already. Follow the rules. You can't help but make money.
We got a genie in disguise here. Thanks for the riches beyond our dreams, Bob. TradeWith2030.com. Appreciate your time. Leave the comments in the box below. Be happy to answer some of those. See you next time. Bye for now.